This bill attempts to do two things, and I think it's misguided in both. Number one, it attempts to deal with a federal decision that would increase rates that was issued in January, which, as I understand it, was intended to deal only with the problem faced by peaking power plants. Yet this bill would apply the tax abatement to all power plants, thus providing a windfall in terms of tax benefits to an industry that certainly doesn't need it at a time of severe budgetary problems. Not only do we experience them here at the state, but New York City has its own budget problems, and guaranteeing tax abatements for an energy industry that's experiencing record profits is something that I think is beyond the pale as we sit here day in and day out listening to the significant budget problems that we have throughout this state and throughout our localities. If we are to do this to save the taxpayers, this additional rate hike, which I certainly support, we should do it in as limited a fashion as possible, as typified in Senator Lanza's bill, which has already passed the Assembly and has the support of the governor. If we were to pass that bill today, it would become law in a matter of days and would save the ratepayers this rate hike without providing additional benefits to the energy industry, which this bill would provide. Let's talk about the second thing it also does, which is an attempt to incentivize generation that is not needed for, in all likelihood, more than a decade. I remember when I was first elected to the Assembly 10 years ago, and California was having brownouts and all sorts of problems that were caused in that state, and the industry took every opportunity to ring the alarm and sound the panic button and say, we better build more in New York because we're going to run out, we're going to be like California, we're going to have blackouts, and we don't want that. And I know a thing or two about blackouts. We had a blackout in Western Queens in 2006 that lasted 10 days. But that had nothing to do with generation. All those warnings from 2001 turned out to be false. Now the industry itself is telling us we have several years before we need additional generation. We had 11 so-called temporary plants jammed down our throats at 79.9 megawatts each, which we talked about when we voted on the Article 10 bill last week, in the name of avoiding the problems of California because we were running out of electricity in New York. Turned out not to be true. We have time to do this intelligently. We have time to do it without wasting valuable taxpayer resources at a critical time of budget shortages to an industry that's got billions of dollars in profits in its pockets. We should save the ratepayers' money from the misguided FERC decision. We should do it by passing Senator Lanza's bill as quickly as possible, and that's why I encourage all my colleagues to vote no on this bill today. Thank you, Mr. President.